Okay, so before watching this video, it's at least recommended that you watch my Pac-Man World 2 review before watching this one. So after having a decently fun time playing Pac-Man World 2, I eventually got around to playing Pac-Man World 3. The reason it took me a while to actually play the game was because I wasn't very impressed with what I was seeing when looking up info on the game. Not only that, but this entry in the Pac-Man World series seems to get the least amount of attention from fans. Perhaps I've been a little too pessimistic about the game before playing it. After all, the game still could be good. Why don't we start things off with the game's setup? We start off in the Pac Village, where Pac-Man is celebrating his 25th birthday. As it turns out, the game's release marked the 25th anniversary of Pac-Man. Well, that's kinda cool, I guess. However, it's with this intro we run into my first problem. Pac-Man now talks, like with a voice actor. Now, to be fair, the voice actor really isn't that bad. I just don't think it fits Pac-Man. And it's really weird hearing Pac-Man talk. Before Pac-Man can take a bite out of his cake, he suddenly starts teleporting all around the village, until finally finding himself in some dumpster. It turns out that the person who is teleporting Pac-Man around is a ghost named Orison. I had never heard of Orison before, and originally thought it was a new character for the game, but it turns out that Orison is actually from the first Pac-Man World. Orison explains that he needs Pac-Man's help to fight off someone named Irwin, who is draining all the energy from the spectral realm, which is the world where the ghosts come from, and that he has captured Clyde and Inky as part of his plan. What exactly is Irwin's plan? I don't really know. I'm sure it's explained at some point throughout the game, but I didn't really care enough to pay any attention. Not only that, but while playing the game, there are moments when characters just start talking to each other about, stuff. Here, I have more of a reason for not paying attention. Rather than just disinterest, I was too busy focusing on some platforming or fighting to really care. What I did manage to gather from the dialogue is that the game tries to be funny, but fails horribly. Often the jokes are rather predictable, not very well delivered, or are just plain stupid.
Don't panic! Everything's under control. I don't think it'll happen.
Frankly, you could do with the exercise, Pac-Man. You're starting to look even more spherical than usual.
Hey, Miss Pac-Man likes me cuddly, okay?
The signal's bad here. Some idiot teleported me into a pit.
Is that clear? You shouldn't rush to judgment, Pac-Man. Teleportation is not so easy.
Orson? Is that you? Are you by any chance the idiot of whom we speak?
I think I'm starting to hate this game. Which ends up making most of the characters rather annoying for me, and the side characters he comes across sometimes are really forgettable. Plus, Irwin is a really crap villain. I don't really get his motivations, he hardly ever shows up in the game, and his design is fucking awful. It's quite ugly and feels rather out of place in the game's rather more cartoony aesthetic. His character model is also the worst compared to Pac-Man's and the Ghosts, which are fine but nothing special. Oh, and Irwin has some butt-ugly sidekick who also shows up very rarely and isn't even fought, so he feels rather pointless. I do like the idea of exploring the spectral realm and wish they could have done more with it. Overall, the story is kinda crap. At the very least, the music is good. I just wish it stood out more. So why don't we instead start taking a look at the gameplay? Much like the previous game, Pac-Man World 3 is a 3D platformer. Once again, you progress through the game by getting to the end of rather linear levels. This time, however, there isn't a world map. Instead, levels are actually much longer and have save spots scattered throughout the levels that kind of act like checkpoints. They are helpful, but I really don't get why these levels are so long, as they can start to get rather tiring. From the title menu though, you will be able to replay any beaten level, as that's where the level select is. The levels themselves aren't too bad, as the platforming is well done, and there are some sections in the levels that are nicely designed and really complement the platforming. We have a fun construction area with some bedoing pads that really bounce Pac-Man around, there are disappearing platforms, and moments where you have to go one way to find a key that will then be used to get further in the level. Plus, for the most part, the levels themselves look rather good. Some are quite colorful and have some nice detail to them, with my favorite being Zephyr Heights with its open mountain setting and windmills. Wait, Zephyr? That's also the name of a Spyro 2 level. What? Okay, hold up, one moment here. Zephyr, a soft, gentle breeze. Oh, okay, I get it. Well, would you look at that? I learned something new today while writing out a script to this review. okay. The ruins and factories do look good, mostly, but these areas start to feel rather samey and feel like there's a lack of variety to them. Honestly, for me, the Spectral Realm looks really boring and uninteresting for a world where ghosts come from. Really, I wish they could have gotten more creative with these levels. Pac-Man, of course, has some returning moves like his Rev Roll and Butt Bounce. The Rev Roll is rarely ever used, but it's still a bit awkward to control once he starts rolling. Most of the time, I only ever use the Rev Roll to activate certain switches. Then there's the Butt Bounce, which is no longer limitless. Now you can only Butt Bounce 3 times in a row, which is rather disappointing. Though there is a positive, as on the 3rd Butt Bounce, Pac-Man creates a small shockwave that is kinda helpful against enemies. But I still prefer the limitless bouncing, as that flowed with the platforming quite well in the previous game. Pac-Man now has some new moves as well, like being able to perform wall jumps, which is a feature I really like in platformers and is well implemented here, as well as Pac-Man being able to swing from poles. There is, however, a new move for Pac-Man, and that would be him punching with crappy combos. Okay, look, Pac-Man punching in Super Smash Bros. Makes sense and works very well, but here in a 3D platformer, it just feels awkward. I mean, how many people really use the punching in Super Mario 64? Punching just has a very short range and doesn't seem to do a lot of damage as it takes forever to take down an enemy. That's not to say his punching is useless, as you will have to use it against enemies who have like spikes on their heads and backs, which is honestly just kind of an annoying feature. To make up for this though, there are some new power-ups. First, we have the Electroshock Pellet, which allows Pac-Man to shoot lightning from his gloves. It's okay. With smaller enemies, it does a nice job of taking them out rather quickly, and it is also used for powering up generators. But when against larger enemies, it takes a bit too long to really take care of them, and it has a rather short range too. Plus, this really leaves you vulnerable to other enemy attacks. You know what? Let's talk about the enemies real quick.
They suck!
What the hell is with these ogre-looking things? These character models look janky and awkward and feel really out of place in this game's art style. Robot enemies, on the other hand, are okay. I mean, these scorpion-looking things are pretty cool, but the rest aren't very interesting. Back to the power-ups. Chrome returns, taking the place of the metal ball power-up from the last time, and works pretty much the same, just shows up very rarely. Secondly, or thirdly I guess, we have the ribbon loop pellet, which causes a line of light to appear behind Pac-Man as he runs around. If you manage to create a circle with the light ribbon, then the enemy within the circle will be exploded, and it's awesome. I just wish the power-up lasted a little longer, as I rather like this one. Then we have the Super Stomp pellet that lets Pac-Man create a super shockwave with a butt bounce, and it's really good for taking out enemies within range. Another power-up I like. I just wish it wasn't timed, and instead had a certain amount of uses. The reason for these power-ups is not only for those enemies who take a lot of hits, and trust me, there are plenty of those, but also for those moments when you have to take out so many enemies before progressing in the level. These moments suck so much as the combat isn't fun. The platforming is, as it's better executed. You also have to take out quite a few enemies before these enemy rushes are even over. Not to mention, there are actually 2 different kinds of enemy rushes, with the second type being annoying in very different ways. Here we have specter holes that will block entryways and spit out spectral ghosts. Finally, we have the last power-up that appears during these rushes, which is the classic Power Pellet. You'll have to pick up the Power Pellet in order to eat the spectral ghosts, and by eating all the ghosts, the spectral hole will disappear, and I have 2 problems with this. First off, the spectral hole will only spit out 2 ghosts at a time, and you'll have to eat about 6 to 8 ghosts before the hole will disappear, which gets tiring. Secondly, if a ghost comes out of the hole while you're in power-up mode, the ghost is unaffected until you eat another power pellet. Sure, that might be a bit of a nitpick, but it's still rather noticeable and stupid. Altogether, these enemy rush segments really hurt the momentum of the platforming and appear way too many times in the levels. As for the segments that vary up the gameplay, I actually rather like them. I'm talking about the few moments in the game where you get to play as Pinky and Blinky, who for some fucking reason is called Clyde. Again, what is with this constant name mix-up between Blinky and Clyde? Is this something that happens in all the Pac-Man World games? Anyway, when playing as Pinky, you'll have to collect special orbs in order to make invisible platforms appear for Pac-Man. Nothing too complex and is used in some not-so-hard puzzles. Blinky, on the other hand, has the ability to shoot out a ghost beam that kills spectral ghosts and is really useful and awesome for killing those bastards. And when sitting at a special orb, will store up a super scream that is used to knock down larger objects. Both of these segments are pretty simple and short, and leave a good taste in my mouth about being able to play as the ghosts in future games. Especially Blinky, who is best for taking out those enemies, and I wish I could play as him for every enemy rush. Scattered throughout the levels, you can find collectible items like cards and fruits. Collecting all the fruit in the level will simply reward you with a card, and these cards are just fun little items you can take a look at in the extra menu. There are also these statues that are hidden throughout the levels, and after doing some research I found out they also unlock cards. Lastly, we have Galaxians that will take you to these classic style levels that are actually rather fun. But are the collectibles worth collecting? To me, not really. Sure, the cards are a little fun, but I just personally don't enjoy exploring levels that go on for quite some time. Okay, so I'm gonna be talking about a spoiler-like thing here, so if you want to avoid that, click here at this time. With that out of the way, let's talk about the only 2 boss fights in the game. Erwin, it turns out, sucks as a boss as well. Sure, the first fight is okay, but nothing really special. However, the final boss fight is awful. It's slow, dull, there's little time to actually hit the boss, and there's very poor visual feedback to if you're actually doing any damage to the boss. Oh, and if you've been wondering why there's a freaking life system in the game, it's because you'll probably die quite a few times at this fight as well. Should there be a life system in the game to begin with? No. Does that help make these boss fights any better? Definitely not. Just another reason Erwin is awful. I miss Spooky. In the end, would I recommend Pac-Man World 3? Maybe. I wouldn't say this is a bad game. The platforming can be fun, there are some nice new skills for Pac-Man, and playing as Pinky and Blinky is pretty decent. I just hate the length of most of these levels, and hate the enemy rush segments that just seem to be padding. And the last level sucks. So if you're willing to put up with the negative, there will be some enjoyable moments in a rather average game. Otherwise, just pass on this one. It's honestly a bit of a disappointment because while I don't hate this game, it definitely could have been better, especially for Pac-Man's 25th anniversary. Well, join me next time where we'll be taking a look at the last Pac-Man game for the PS2. See you then. Hey everyone, MCB here, gonna just do this without any scripting outro here, just as you probably noticed, I changed up the scripting a bit, just thought I'd try it out and see how it goes. You guys go ahead and give me some feedback on whether or not you like this type of style, and if I should keep up with it, or if you prefer the older style. Aside from that, yeah, not too much else, just kinda thought I should lay that out there. Oh, I should also mention, I won't be doing a Halloween video this year. I've been really busy with some stuff, involving my job and stuff like that, so I've been a bit too preoccupied to really get something properly prepared in time. So unfortunately, I won't be doing that, though I do plan on playing some other horror games, or at least horror-themed games, this next year mostly, that I will hopefully be able to beat in time to where I could possibly spend even a whole month taking a look at some horror-esque games. Well, then again, I only do like a video every other week, so, you know, more than a month. Aside from that, I hope you guys found this to be at least mostly an informative video about the game, and yeah, have a good day.